right, runners, another episode of Mr. Rubio Used to Run, the Running Warehouse podcast. I'm your host, Joe Rubio, and my wingman, Connor Blaylock.
Joe, you're coming in hot today.
I know.
You're usually coming in hot, but this is extra hot today.
This is extra hot. We have some guests. You know, we have to keep it on an even keel.
Yeah.
And then ramp it up from there.
And we usually have your crazy friends, maybe a pro runner, but we got some smart people in the building today.
Yeah, unlike the pro runners.
That's mean. That's not true.
Bunch of dumbasses, yeah.
So we got Dr. Lisa, Mitro, and of course, the man, one of the men behind Doctors of Running. We've got Matt. Matt, what's the hot topic right now? I feel like me and you were going back and forth quite a bit the last year with my injury, and I just need to know, what running shoe should I be wearing right now? Because I need to find the shoe that works.
So honestly, and people are not going to like this answer, and I'm sure Dr. Lisa, you're going to share this with me. At this point, it's whatever a comfortable shoe is for you that really helps you get back to getting that mileage in. Like, it sounds like you're not doing too much fast stuff. You're really focusing more on easy mileage, stuff like that, and the shoe should really match that, but it still should be comfortable, because I tell you this as someone who's just finished a PhD in biomechanics, that a lot of the biomechanical models of shoe fitting really don't work, right? There's too many variables. So really, comfort is the #1 factor that really plays into what shoe is going to work best for you. And some people don't like that answer because they want to have the fanciest shoe that's going to be linked to this injury and that. It's like, unless you tell me specifically what it is, making sure you got enough room in the shoe, making sure the shoe is transitioning well with you and it feels good. Reference the RunCat scale that was developed out of Australia by some phenomenally smart people, that there's a couple factors being heel cushioning, forefoot cushioning, forefoot flexibility, stability, not too much, not too little, as well as also just having fitting well and comfortable is really, and after that, just go run. Don't overthink it.
We can get a little bit more into my injury later. You were definitely a help, but I think we got a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys are both doctors, but can you...
A little back.
Yeah, a little background on how you got started in this influencer doctor space.
Well, I'll go first, I guess. I got my DPT in 2018, and my first job out of grad school, I was just thrown into the running community, which was really fun. It was awesome. I have a background of being a collegiate softball player, so I started running just to kind of keep up with my patients and kind of stay in the know of what they were doing, and I really learned a lot. I had a great mentor, and then I just kind of started posting myself running on Instagram to keep myself accountable, and I was like, wow, there's a huge gap in rehab for runners, and some of the information was really bad, I'm not gonna lie. And it was to the point where I was like, if someone actually listens to this, they're gonna hurt themselves. So I just started posting, sharing some tips, and kind of just went from there. What about you?
Different story. So I actually started out working in high school in running stores. So Fit Right Northwest, which no longer exists in Oregon, and Foot Traffic were the two places that I got my start working with running shoes. And being a newer runner and not having any guidance, I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying stuff, and I had the amazing experience to work there and start learning about footwear and started geeking out and realizing certain things worked, certain things didn't, and I was constantly looking for this perfect shoe, which I still haven't found to this day. That continued where I didn't actually run that much in high school. It wasn't until college where I really started competing and just jumped right in, and of course got injured, and trying to figure out, all right, how do I keep myself healthy and how does the footwear maybe influence this? So then came down to LA, did my doctorate in physical therapy, and my second year, because I was burning through so many shoes, I figured, hey, I would love it if I could get some free shoes, because I see all these people like Run Blogger getting all this free stuff. And so maybe if I put some reviews out there, maybe this will happen. And it didn't. But it became this way for me to share what I was learning, what I'd learned in running stores from all the great people, but also what I was learning as a PT, going, well, there's some basic biomechanics stuff that people don't really know, and there's a lot of confusing marketing and things like that. So let me help clear this up. And when I was about ready to quit and said, there's nobody's listening to this, Skechers actually sent me my first pair of shoes, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then it just slowly over time continued on. I've got the best group of people I could ever ask for, who are phenomenal, that have supported and are really part of the team that makes Doctors of Running. But that continued. I did residency, fellowship is where I met Nathan, and then everybody else slowly came on, and then I was psychotic enough to start a PhD on top of that. And at the start of the PhD, we were just talking about this on the podcast the other day, that's actually when we really turned it into what it is today, and it just has taken off more than I could have ever imagined. And so very, very honored that we could provide help to people and help teach about what might work better for them.
You said you competed in college.
I did, yes.
Which college?
University of Puget Sound. I
Okay.
was a D3 guy.
All right. And what events?
Obviously 5K, 10K,
Okay.
for sure. Cross is the one that I made to nationals, 5K and 10K in track. I was on track to make it, and then people got really fast that year. I didn't make it to nats.
And then graduate school?
Which one?
Oh,
No,
both of them.
So Western University of Health Sciences, where I
That's a
got my
little flex
DPT.
right there.
Sorry, yeah, that was rude.
Is that
Sorry.
the one in Pasadena?
Yes, or it's not in Pasadena. It's in Pomona.
Pomona, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And then I did my PhD just recently at Azusa Pacific.
Okay. Awesome.
We got some smart people in the building right now.
Everyone in the building's smarter than us, so.
Now, you mentioned...
I feel like that all the time too. So.
You mentioned when you got started seeing some social media, videos, information that was just bad. What's some of the worst content advice you guys have seen, heard, that you've had to say, no, that's not the way to do it?
Where to start?
Where do we
Oh my gosh,
start?
you go first.
Every day in the office, probably.
Well, I would say one thing that pops to my head is to stretch a tendon that has inflammation.
God.
That's something we hear a lot or see a lot, and it's like, you're just kind of making the injury worse. You actually kind of want to do the exact opposite of stretching. So I would say that's one that comes to my head. What about you?
I would say that's also probably one of the more common ones. There's nothing wrong with stretching. There are people that do have limited mobility and flexibility, and for those people that is beneficial. But the people who are like, oh, I've stretched this thing all the time and it's like still feels tight, and I should now do this way more aggressive thing. There are tissues that respond really well to stretching. There are other ones that, especially when they're injured, that absolutely you should not. You just strained a muscle, do not stretch it. You have a tendinopathy or tendon problem, don't stretch it. The tissue physiology doesn't work with that. A lot of people, and we just talked about this, that a lot of what should be encouraged is really getting people to do appropriate strengthening. Because not only do runners not do strengthening, it's like trying to pull teeth to get them to do that. It's also, we lose strength as we get older. We lose power. It's literally what my PhD was on, is aging and the impact on masters runners. So good, appropriate, simple strength is probably the biggest thing. Because I also see like people make stuff way too complicated. And it's just like, here's this really fancy exercise. It's like, here's the best, this one exercise is going to fix all your back pain. It's like,
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
that's not how that works. And I have like 40 different systematic reviews that I can show you that doesn't suggest that. So it's helping. Social media has like, it tries to funnel and make the best thing for everyone. That doesn't exist. You have to learn more about who you are as a person, what your unique needs are. And it's hard to get that through social media. Everybody wants the quick, what's the one thing I can do? And it's like, you have to learn more about yourself.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear that.
And it's kind of like how there's not one best shoe out there.
Right.
There's not one best exercise. There's not one best stretch. There's not one best, strength exercise.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's always a combination or figuring out what works best for you.
And there's also the flavor of the month.
There is
right?
the flavor. That's very true.
And
Yes.
so when I was in high school, the thing to do was you did static stretching a lot before you ran.
Right.
Yeah.
And now it's more common to do active warm-up drills and
Right.
so forth,
Yeah.
and then do static stretching afterwards.
Right.
Is that still the...
That is still the thing where they discover there's nothing wrong. Again, static stretching.
Yeah.
Some people might need it, but they actually found that if you statically stretch aggressively before you do an athletic activity, it actually decreases your ability to produce power and force.
And I was reading this morning because I'm into golf, and this guy on Instagram is talking about a proper warm-up, and the first thing he talked about is static stretching.
Right.
As part of the warm-up thing right before you go hit. And I'm going, that's wrong.
You mean the golfing thing where you need elastic recoil,
Right.
and like you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to
and you wanna
statically
generate
stretch
as much
it?
power?
Yeah, you want power.
Yeah. You don't want...
You just want to
Yeah,
sit there
you
and
don't wanna
hold
be a
your
noodle.
hamstring stretch for
Yeah.
30 seconds?
Yeah.
There's
so-
better ways to do
Yeah.
it.
Well, it's tough too when I can think of a few times over the years when I got injured, you strain a calf or
Yeah.
a hamstring. The first thing you want to do is let's fix it.
Yeah.
Let's roll it out really
Right.
heavily. Let's
Yeah.
stretch. And then all of a sudden you've made something that was kind of bad really
Right.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
We learn.
We learned, yeah. It's just we all at this table have
Yeah.
had those experiences, and just because you have a degree doesn't mean you do it any better. Honestly, you do the same stuff, and you're like, wait,
We don't make the best patients.
We don't.
No,
at
but
all.
distance runners tend to not want to do anything other than run.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the more running, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily the case, right?
Yeah.
So my daughter's a pole vaulter, and so she asked me a year or so ago, make me faster. And I said, okay. And I'm a distance coach, and I know how to make distance runners faster. I don't know a damn thing about making a sprinter faster. So I contacted a friend of mine, Brian Fitzgerald, down in, you know Brian?
I know of Brian.
Yeah. So, he's arguably one of the best high school sprint coaches. And he gave me the building blocks of what to do. He said, he didn't tell me exactly what to do. He just said, you do some of this, come up with a program, throw it back at me, and I'll give you my feedback.
Sweet.
So I could learn it.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of the stuff that she was doing, I'm explaining to my distance runners. They want to say, they're saying, why are we doing so much speed? And I said, 20 times 200 is not speed. It's speed endurance.
Right.
Right. We're working on different systems and different, the idea behind it. They go, but it's a 200. They go, yeah, well, a 10K is 52 200s back to back without a break. I mean, this doesn't matter. But, the concept of heavy weights, low rep, big rest for generating max force is that's how you do it. Right. And then as a distance runner, you're looking and the sprinters are lazy. They're regenerating that energy system and you don't understand. So it's the same kind of thing. You just doing the research, talking to experts, talking to a couple different experts, and then learning and going, oh, well, they know a lot more than me. And then back to the golf thing, when I'm watching like Rory McIlroy or the top golfers, they're doing exactly what Brian had me do for my daughter. Because the idea is to generate as much force into the ground, the center of the earth, as possible. And when you can do that, if you can increase the amount of force you can put in the ground, you increase your speed. Yeah, it's just force. Yeah,
That's it.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's where plyometrics can come into play with runners
for sure.
too.
Yeah.
One of the smartest people I've ever met, and a really great mentor for me, once told me that if you really want to get better at something, master the basics. You can make something as complicated as you want, but unless you master the basics and the foundation, you'll never really get good. And so I feel like that's what I'm hearing is like, yeah, you're still at the end of the day needing to produce larger amounts of force faster to be able to run faster. You want to be able to run faster, you got to build this first, then go this. And whether that's the run up for doing pole vault, whether that's the run up running a 10K, like that's foundation is still there. Once you kind of get more specific, then it's a little more complicated. Like then you get more specific there, but like it's still the basics.
The other thing is when we're talking about talking to athletes and stuff, and they get really into the minutia without understanding the basics. That's where you start running into trouble because they're focusing too much of their attention on things that don't really matter.
Yeah.
So it's like any new activity you take up, like you're overwhelmed with all the information. You don't know what's important.
Right.
And as you get more experience with whatever the activity is, then you start focusing on things that are important to you and they're going to make you a better athlete. Right. But initially it's like, what the hell do I do?
Right.
There's a lot.
This sounds like picking shoes. Like this, like when you first get in, like I cannot imagine coming into running now because back when I started running, things were fairly simple. It was like neutral, support, racing. Now there's so many options, which is not a bad thing, but I can imagine it being a little overwhelming for people going, what do I choose? Do I need to get like a super racing, a $300 shoe right away? Or do I need this like, fairly simple but really comfortable like $130, $40 shoe that just gets my miles on? Like there's a lot of choices and there's a lot of information overload.
Yeah, big time. So a stupid example is before I came in here, I was down in accounting and they have, I want to say 16 different flavors of Doritos. They get a new bag every day, and I go in and try them, and it's a taste test. But they all taste really similarly, right? But do you really need 16 different flavors of Doritos?
I think
16
some
flavors
people
of
would
Doritos?
argue you do.
Yeah. Oh, why was it today? I don't know. Anyways, regardless, it's just a lot of choice, right? So if you didn't know which one you wanted, because I tasted a fiery mango, and that was horrible. Or
That sounds awful.
hot mustard. Hot mustard Dorito is just bad. Don't do that.
That actually sounds pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm a weirdo, so it's all
Yeah, but the Tapatio one is probably the best that I've found. So same kind of thing with shoes, right? When there's so many different kinds of shoes out there, and that's where you get people that go into running stores to try to get some answers, right? And it's one of these things where you have to let go. These people know more than me and what they're suggesting, and there's people that don't want to listen to it. They just want that one because it's pretty.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or it's popular.
Yeah.
Or they saw someone else wearing it.
So growing up in selling shoes in Oregon, if somebody didn't like the color, I said just go run in Forest Park for a few minutes when it's raining. That they'll be a totally different color. It'll be fine.
What year did you graduate?
From
high school.
High school, 2009.
2009.
Yeah.
I was 2011.
2011. Okay, you guys are kids.
I know.
When did you graduate?
High school was 2011.
2011.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm 81.
81. You're 81 years old?
Now I'm close to 81 years old. So, no, it's just
Yeah.
it's just different because back when I was in high school in the 70s, there was very few brands and very few models. So it was a lot easier to have a running shoe store.
Right.
And the choices were minimized.
Right. It was-
Right. So it was a lot easier. You know, you only had like 6 choices. So which one do you want?
And
Right.
the choices were minimized and the stack height was minimized.
Yeah,
When we look
yeah.
today,
Yeah.
stack heights are getting higher and higher. And that leads me to my next question. We had a guest on recently, Bill Mad Dog Scobie, known for 40 years of 100-mile weeks. He had some weeks at 200-plus miles. Crazy. And he was doing it all either barefoot or in low-stack shoes. What are your thoughts now on the growing height of stack in these shoes, the super foams, the plates? What's good? What's bad? What do we need to look for?
You mind if I start on this one? You
Yeah,
wanna
go
first?
for it.
Or do you wanna go
I feel
first?
like you're like
Chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like try not to like chomp on this. I hate to use this go-to, especially like a PT phrase of "it depends." I don't think it's necessarily good or bad as long as people maintains a little connection with the ground. And the fact that, yes, the taller a shoe is, it is not completely free energy. I think people confuse economy with free energy or getting faster. You still got to work. Where that work and that load is happening in your body is going to dramatically shift. So from the PT and the rehab and injury standpoint, we really haven't seen, and there's good evidence for this, we have not seen a shift in injury rates throughout all of this. It's stayed fairly similar. And depending on who you ask, it'll be anywhere from like 30% to 70% of runners get injured every single year. And carbon plates, that kind of stuff hasn't changed the rates. What has changed is the types, as people are now getting a lot more hamstring, hip type injuries, because a lot of these shoes take some of the workload away from the ankle, but it's got to go somewhere. You don't get free energy. That violates the laws of physics. So where people are getting injured is going to shift. They're still doing dumb stuff. Just because you have a shoe that allows you to do more doesn't mean you're not going to still do dumb stuff like overtrain and things like that. What this might mean for us long term, I don't know. I just think if the tables shift and all of a sudden minimalism comes back, it's going to be really hard for people to transition back, because people are getting very acclimated to this type of shoes, because now it's everything, right? Even daily trainers have super foams, and it's not a bad thing. There's now super trainers out there, and so we don't know enough about whether this is good or not. There's been a couple early studies that have talked about maybe there might be an increase in this type of injury, but I think it's type, not rate. And people, even back in the 70s, it's been the same rate since a lot of that research is when it started coming out. Right. So I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad, but it's very different, and we have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm seeing from the brands, and I saw it once, first a year or so ago, and basically not a return to minimal, but like a free with sipes.
Yeah.
So really flexible, but it's thicker than the free was, and a super foam. That's what they're coming, not for running. It's like the free was designed by Vin Lanana.
Yeah.
Right, to protect your feet. It's safe for doing strides and stuff like that.
Right. It wasn't meant to be a long distance. Right.
No,
It was meant for strides and
so that's
foot strength.
what's coming down the pipe from a lot of brands is a training aid like that.
I don't know. Why would you do that with max stack height?
No, it's not max.
Oh, got it.
No,
just
it's like a traditional
but the
racing
super
flat.
foam. Oh, okay,
yeah, with
got
a
it.
super foam and a sipes.
Yeah.
So more of a training aid.
Yeah, but with the super foams, here's the one thing, and there's some early evidence on this, that you're not going to engage like a lot of the elasticity the same way. So when you have more traditional like EVA or firmer foams, the things that gives you that bounce is your tendons.
Yes.
When you run in more super foams, your joints tend to be more stiff. You don't go through as much excursion or movement. That could be a good thing for some people, because that might mean they don't hit a part of a joint that's really irritated. So like, oh, this makes me feel so much better. It's like, yeah, because you're not going through as much range. Other people, that might increase the stress through the joint, because there's evidence that the softer shoe is actually the more internal joint loading you get.
Got it.
So that could be good. It could be bad. But I feel like if you're trying to create a training tool that teaches people how to better utilize more natural mechanics, I'd probably stay away from super foams. It's not that they're bad, but it's going to cause very different reactions of some of the soft tissues, like tendons, for example, which are rubber bands. And if you really want to make those stronger, more resilient, and utilize what we just talked about, plyometrics, the stretch shortening cycle, which is the foundation of that. I don't know if a super foam is going to be like a super compliant foam that gives that to you is
more traditional EVA.
yeah,
is what
I
you
would think I would think more traditional EVA. Like just make the shoe more comfortable, and if you're going to use it as a training tool, make sure you're doing the right training. Because why do you need to be doing faster, farther in your training? Like that's what training is for, I guess. But I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And Joe was in on a panel recently that started to hear a little bit more about more fractures, stress fractures being seen specifically in elites, but I think it was across the board.
It was more elites. Do you know Amal Saxena? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he spoke at a panel I was on, and he mentioned that he sees a lot of navicular stress fractures in elite runners. And on average, over the last, I want to say he said 10 years, he's seen an average of 1 to 3 navicular stress fractures every year. And so far, the first half of this year, he's seen 11. And 5 of the athletes were wearing the same shoe, but he wouldn't tell me what shoe it was. And not the same model of shoe.
Right.
And his theory is because of the design of the plate didn't work with their foot.
Yep.
So they're generating weight incorrect. Not the forces they were creating didn't work with the plate.
Well, if you're forcing a certain type of foot, a certain type of gait into a shoe that's not going to work for them, it is going to change the biomechanics. It's going to change the load, because that's basically what a stress fracture is. It's too much load, body can't adapt to it, something's going to break down. In this case, it's the bone. So I think that just goes to say, like, these different types of shoes, they're changing the different load through the area, and that's something that I wish more runners knew about, because that would help maybe stop some injuries. But that goes back to it being like, oh, I just want this shoe because it's a shiny new shoe. But it could help your injury, or it could help your pain. It also could make it 10 times worse or turn it into a stress fracture. So that goes back to pick the shoe that's most comfortable for you. Pick the shoe that works best for you, not, and listen to what your body has to say about it, because I'm sure, they probably had symptoms before it turned into a stress fracture too.
Well, Puma, I was at the Paris Marathon. Puma was going over some of their studies, and they have 2 different kind of racing flasks. They have the Fast R,
right,
and then the DV8.
The Elite 3,
Elite 3, and the Elite 3 is designed for higher cadence runners, and the Fast R is designed for lower cadence. And he and I were talking to Todd, and we said, I just threw out 180 for the cadence. He said, no, 175.
175.
So if it's 175 and above, that's the DV8. If it's 174 and below, it's the Fast R. And what they found is...
Ooh, someone's not convinced.
Yeah, I'm just telling you what their study says.
That's what the data says.
So like a 5-person sample size?
That's what it sounds like.
No, they're doing their elite athletes, their sponsored athletes. So it might be 5. But what they found was a couple things. One is even though you had a higher cadence, and some people just didn't like the nitro. Right? They just didn't work with their cadence. But they were faster. Over the course of a marathon. So they had to make a choice. Do you want to take your chances on being uncomfortable? Or our testing is showing that this shoe is faster on you. It's a tough choice.
It is a really tough choice.
Particularly if you're going the Olympic marathon.
I got to give credit to Corey and Andrea Paulson from Saucony for introducing this concept to me of that the economy testing is very common, but just because something is you're most economical in it, it might not be the most comfortable. So it's a challenge for everybody to go, yes, I could put on an Alpha Phi 3, and maybe that is the thing I'm fastest in. But am I going to be able to make it through a marathon in that shoe if it's not comfortable, right? It's like when you prescribe shoes from a clinicalist perspective, you could have the most perfect thing that I know this fixes your biomechanics, but if the person hates it, they're not going to wear it, and it doesn't do anything. So you have to give the intervention that people are actually going to be able to complete things in. So I think it's still that yes, physiologically it might be great, but we also have to know you're not going to, you have to balance that with comfort too. Comfort's really important for performance. Maybe not for 100 meters. I don't know that, but for a marathon,
But in talking with Jeff Gray, one of the things he mentioned to me, and I don't know if this is true or not, but if a shoe is too tight, if you're uncomfortable, you perceive the shoe as firmer than if it fits properly.
Yes, I can totally see that. There's a good amount of research on that. Yeah,
we've actually seen shoes with the same tooling but different uppers, and people swear that the toolings are different because how that upper is making the shoe feel on foot.
This is why for Doctors of Running, I love that we have a team and we try to get multiple people reviewing, because we always know that different people are going to respond differently to shoes. So I always get excited when two of us like have a totally different opinion. Like Andrea from our team and me had a completely different experience with the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4, and I was like, great, let's go talk about this, because people respond differently. Even though it might have a certain durometer of foam, somebody might perceive that as firm, somebody might perceive it as soft, and that's why, again, this is we're so individual. Like, people have to learn what's going to learn themselves and honestly go, yes, this might be the most economical thing on the market, but is it going to work for me? That you have to figure out.
And then we have the podiatrists that tell everyone to get a Bondi.
Yep.
Right?
That's not just podiatrists. That's not.
But it's like, it's again the flavor of the month.
Right.
The same podiatrist and same piece of paper that has a prescription on it, Bondi.
Plantar fasciitis,
Bondi. Yeah, that's exactly.
I will say, and I think Lisa touched on this earlier, it's almost like the Instagram type model where like people get the flavor of the month, and it's within the whole medical community. It's podiatrists, physicians, PT. It's everybody like that hasn't taken the time to really get to know. And honestly, the medical community does not know shoes very well. They don't, unfortunately, which it would be a lot better if they're like, I'm looking for these characteristics. Now I'm going to send you to the expert who knows these characteristics, and this is what I'm looking for, rather than, oh, the company was advertising this and I saw this in my email, so I'm going to give this shoe to everyone. It's not their fault, because in medicine right now, people are seeing more patients than ever before. People are more overwhelmed. The documentation's crazy. So it's really hard for clinicians to take the extra time to go, let me go learn this. It's a lot easier for them to go, my other patient found the Bondi comfortable. Okay, go get that one. Go get that one. I think there needs to be more collaboration between people that are like medical professionals and people working in running stores or running communities to go, actually, if you were looking for this thing, send them over here, and then this person with the forward expertise might be a little bit better. I think it just needs to be more collaboration between multiple different groups.
And that's one of the theories behind when you open a new running store, right? You go out and you find all the local podiatrists, you introduce yourself, right? Establish yourself with some expertise, and so the doctor feels comfortable sending them in your direction versus just taking your chances, right? That sort of thing.
Yeah. And going back to the super shoes again, one other thing that I wanted to bring up was, this is something I personally noticed in my own training. Back in the day, when you wore racing flats, you'd be beat up the next day, maybe a couple days, take a while to recover from a hard speed workout or race. Now the super shoes, you feel fantastic the next day. You're ready to go pound out a 20-mile long run at 6-minute pace like that. How much do you feel like that is also contributing to people now, the workload that they're doing and the amount of miles and speed, they're just getting more in than ever before?
I've been kind of bouncing this thing back and forth, because what I'm about to say is testimonial. I do not have a lot of evidence behind what I say, but my theory would be that they're feeling good because their muscles they've gotten a little more bounce. Maybe their muscles haven't had to work as hard. You are more economical, right? More economical with this stuff. However, what they're not talking about is bones don't respond that same way, right? You load a bone, whether you got a super foam or not, that bone still takes a while. And if you're running really hard, what the greatest stress on bones happen when you create greater forces and you're running faster. Now, your muscles might feel good. You're not going to be able to feel what's happening to your bones. They take time to heal. We've had some great guests on our podcast talking about bone tissue health. And I don't know, do you know how long, or like if you go for a run, how much of that hour run do you think you actually get good bone building stimulus?
No idea.
It's only the first 30 seconds to a minute. That's it. After that, stimulus is over. And if anything, it's not to say you shouldn't be running longer distances. It's that if you actually want to be building good bone, it happens from more intense, shorter stuff, and you need lots of rest because it takes bone time to heal. It's not muscle. And so that's why even though the bone stress, the navicular stuff is still in the early case study stages and we need some more evidence, it doesn't surprise me because the super shoes do allow you to train harder And Justin Matthews, who just finished his master's, did a really cool study where he looked at training in racing like traditional racing flats versus super shoes. The people that trained in racing flats, even though they were more sore, they got more benefits fitness-wise than the people that ran in the super shoes at the end of the study. Right? You get more out, even though you're more sore, because at the end of the day, when you go run, when you produce power, when you lift, that stimulus in your body healing is what gets you better. If you blunt that, yeah, you might be able to get through a really intense effort, but the stimulus isn't going to be the same. So that makes me wonder, because different tissues heal differently, maybe there might be something to that bone stress stuff. And so maybe people still need to be careful about what they're doing despite feeling good.
And going back to runners just want to run,
right?
Particularly for female distance runners, doing heavy weights builds bone density.
Yes.
And that's really important. And to get female distance runners to actually do that is like pulling teeth.
I would say getting any distance runner
any
to do
distance
it is like
runner,
pulling
yeah,
teeth.
yeah. But what you tend to find is someone goes into the weight room and they're doing 25 or 30, bar dips, or not bar dips, bench press or something like that, and you go, that's not getting it done, right? And same thing with I mentioned Clayton Young, right? He does a lot of hops.
Yeah.
Side to side hops,
Yep.
which I don't think has anything to do with running faster. I think it has to do with injury prevention.
Yep.
Right.
Agree. That poor
And like
glute med.
Achilles
Achilles,
elasticity. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are just observations, and again, I don't have this data. I brought this up a couple times, but when I've been running since 1977, I have never, ever, ever heard of a competitive male distance runner having a femoral stress fracture to this year.
Yeah.
With Graham Blanks at Harvard and Simeon, the kid at Oregon. So he's a top distance runner in high school 2 years ago. Both had femoral stress fractures, which it's weird.
Yeah. That's not very common among,
Yeah, for a 20-some-year-old male, unless they're really malnourished.
That's the other factor you got to consider is like if you're training harder, even with the super shoe, you still and we got to bring in our dietitian colleagues here because Connor heard me say this earlier. Yeah. As a physical therapist, it's not within my scope of practice to be giving dietary prescriptions, things like that. But distance runners need to also realize that your nutritional intake does still need to be really good, like bone, muscle, everything. You got to be on top of that stuff. And there's definitely some.
If you're increasing your training, increasing your intensity, your calorie intake needs to increase.
Yep.
I mean, you just need to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not a dietitian either, but that's what you tell people.
Yeah.
Same important thing like take your iron with your vitamin C.
Right. Yeah.
That sort of thing. Calcium, don't do that next.
You don't need to be a dietitian to know that what I ate this morning
is not good for you.
Is not what you need to be doing.
That's okay.
What do you think? 9 donuts?
8 donuts.
I think
9 donuts.
every once in a while, I think that's totally fine to do. You'll burn through that.
Thanks, Matt.
A little caloric extra might also help, little extra bone density. Carbohydrates are actually one of the best things for bone density. Believe it or not, it's when you have a low carbohydrate intake, the bone is where your body actually starts to pull from first. I did not know that until I talked to an amazing researcher named Rich Willey, who's the bones science guy, and was if you do a low carb diet, unfortunately, not everyone, but a lot of people that you start losing that. So a little extra influx of carbs may not be a bad thing.
There you go.
More donuts.
Now the
so
sugar
more donuts.
and the fat, probably not what you want. But
That's okay.
Yeah.
You'll burn through it. It's
Sugar
fine.
spike in the crash.
I'll get a few extra miles in.
I was totally. We were at lunch, and Connor was just out, and I was like, I wonder if I can get a selfie with sleeping Connor. And then I was like, that's weird. And then you woke up.
Yeah, I wouldn't have cared.
That's right. Right.
Exactly. What else you have for us, sir?
Oh man. Okay, so we've talked shoes. The stack heights are getting higher. The super foams are getting added. What's the one shoe right now that's missing in the space? Is there anything right now that's the next it shoe or something that you would really like to see in your own lineup?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think it's always about it's like we're trying to reinvent shoes. Yep. And I think that's scary because it's like the next shiny thing is what everyone's going to go to. It's kind of like how there was a barefoot shoe movement. And now there's the super shoes and the carbon plated. It's like, what's next? Because performance does keep improving. Running economy keeps improving. But again, what's happening to our gait? What's happening to where we're placing our load. So that's really hard to say. It depends situation per usual. I think it's just depending on the person, and hopefully we can start to be, smarter as runners and start to think, okay, what's actually working best for me, my stride, what distance I'm running. I think that's where runners need to really personalize and individualize the situation. I don't know though. I don't know. Do you have any input on that?
I think they're just going to start legalizing the Spira shoes from years ago, and that's just the next.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, they're quite heavy.
Yes. Oh, they were. I never tried them.
Oh, they were ridiculous. About over 16 ounces. Or something
Oh
like
my
that.
gosh.
Yeah,
Bricks.
Yeah, exactly.
I figured if I referenced those, I figured you would know.
I'm about the only guy that
yeah.
knows what that is.
Yeah.
I had an older, back when I worked in the retail store, older man come in and ask for those, and I had to look it up. I had no idea.
I do.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
You lived through it.
Yeah.
One other question I want, because, we talked about,
I was joking about the Spira things, by the way.
we talked about a year ago. That's when I had my big injury. I was out for 8 months. No runner wants to be in that spot. I've never been in that spot in my life. We talked a little bit, and I know the first thing you told me when I rolled my ankle, I felt some pain on my 5th metatarsal. I said, what should I do? You told me, go get an x-ray. What did I do? I didn't go get an x-ray. I said, I'll wait it out for a week or two.
Now, to be fair, the only reason I suggested that is you gave me, and that getting an x-ray is not always the first thing you should do, but you gave me all the signs and symptoms that made me go, I'm a little nervous about this.
Yes, and you were very calm.
Yeah.
Did you have a pop?
It hurt so much. I don't know what happened. I was kind of a little bit in shock when it happened, but my ankle rolled, and I believe I hit a rock.
Yeah.
And it actually broke the upper of the shoe.
Yep.
The force was so strong. And I walked on it for about a week. Then I took a few weeks on crutches, and then I finally went and got eventually an MRI in, I think 2 months in, and it had actually healed by that point.
Great.
But I dealt with it for 6-7 months of just lingering pain. The shockwave therapy was that last bit to get me over the edge. But man, the fractures can be gnarly.
If you don't take care of them properly.
If you don't care of them properly.
In the foot and ankle, and this is not to scare anybody that for whatever reason, and if you have any idea, I'm always looking for this, but hands and feet have a very increased risk of chronicity of symptoms. The tissue will heal.
Right.
And this is where we go down a rabbit hole where we could have a couple totally other podcasts on the current evidence on pain science and understanding that you can have tissue damage and not have pain, and have pain and no tissue damage. That getting those symptoms to go away, kind of the longer you wait to take care of this stuff, you have an increased risk of this becoming a little bit more non-tissue related, right? And so that's why getting on this stuff is usually better. But we don't always have that opportunity, so I'm not judging at all.
So if the bone healed, which the MRI suggested, there was some the only thing they could see was some fluid buildup that was still in that area. What is that lingering pain that continues on for months? I mean, I'm sure it could be a variety of things.
So you could have had that fluid beforehand, and that may just be an incidental finding. So our understanding of pain now has gone far beyond what we thought. Where it used to be you get a cut here, that's where you have pain. Yeah. That's not even remotely close to how this works. That pain is far more complicated, and I do not want to say it's just in your head, because it's not. We actually have just found out that your gut is the second largest source of neurons in your body. So you actually have a few brains, believe it or not. It's that many neurons, but pain is a very complex personal emotional experience, and there's a lot of things that influence it. For whatever reason, the farther out you go, there's an increased risk, and we don't know why people tend to get more chronic stuff. So it's very common for everything to heal and for still that lingering stuff to be around. It's great that you have a positive response with the shockwave. We really don't know what really helps people at this point, and sometimes it's just that one random thing. People are like, oh, it's gone. We're like, did your brain get distracted and kind of reset, or was it the shock? We have no idea, but the earlier you get on stuff, the lower the risk of that kind of chronicity.
Yeah. The other thing is, I always thought people that had chronic pain were just weak until I started getting tingling in the ends of my fingers, and it just over the weeks it radiated down around, and I couldn't sleep, and it wasn't like taking a hammer and hitting my hand. It was just this numbing Chinese water torture thing. And I got to the point where I was going to go on a flight to Europe. And the thing that hurt the most was sitting at my desk typing. And that's what you do on a flight for 14 hours. So I talked to my buddy, who's my physician, and he didn't, I think he did an MRI, but anyways, one of my things on disc in my back was squishing down on the nerve. And he says, that thing is just angry, so we need to calm it down. So he gave me some medicine for epilepsy. And within 2 doses of this stuff, it was gone. Amazing. Like epilepsy medicine to get rid of nerve pain. I don't know how the hell that works.
Without going too complicated, basically, you're modulating the response of the nerve. That's what epilepsy does.
Yeah.
So, like, the medication is, epilepsy is basically uncontrolled neurologic or like stimulus, right?
Oh, okay.
It usually happens in the brain.
Right.
But that's really cool that they would use that for like a radiculopathy or radiculitis to go, hey, let me calm the
and it's the first
firing.
line of defense.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm surprised it wasn't like an anti-inflammatory first, an injection, and then
He
we'll
might have
go
done that,
route.
but the thing that
That he remembers, yeah.
I remember. It's just this, I mean, he
You
gave
just
me
don't hear about that
he
often.
gave me a bottle of like 50 pills, and I took 2.
Yeah.
I just found the bottle the other day, and it's like, it's years old. Well, this is probably not
Don't
any
use
good.
that. Don't use that.
No.
Don't assume just because you have symptoms that you're weak. I feel like that's another thing on social media that's kind of gotten out of hand is like everybody, instead of going, you would benefit from strength training, it's like, oh, this is the weak muscle. This is the weak muscle. This is the weak muscle. Instead of going, yeah,
It's a
not
chain.
always- yeah, it's like a whole chain of like, how is all this? It's usually, I think you said this best earlier, right? It was like, it's usually a group of things, and it's not even one factor. It might be you didn't sleep well, poor nutrition, life's getting a little crazy, and you overtrained, and like, it's just, injuries are more complicated. But the part that I would encourage you, and I think you learn from this, is going, and I remember, I think I said this is an opportunity for you to make some changes. An injury is your body going, I can't keep doing this, and you get to go, what improvements do I need to make in my life to make this better so I can keep improving?
Yeah.
Whether people take that step.
Well, it's amazing. Like, you explain to people that, like tendons, right? Well, how's your calcium intake? That affects it, right? If you don't have enough calcium, you start getting whatever. They get stiffer, right? And you get more injuries in your hip and your Achilles and your knees. And somebody has a weird hip problem. The other thing is, are you dehydrated? How much water do you drink a day, right?
Or sodium intake.
Sodium intake.
Yeah,
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And they all fit together, right? So injuries aren't as simple as, you're running too much or too fast.
Yeah. I mean, there's, training load errors definitely play a role
Right.
into running related injuries, but kind of like what we were talking about earlier, some people will be like, oh, I have knee pain. I just have to strengthen my gluteus medius and that's it. And it's like, well, it's never really one muscle. I can't think of an injury where it's like, everything is just working together. Even if it's at the foot and ankle, it might be some sort of weakness at the hip. The body it works as a chain, and it's, it works as it's a machine. It's not just one thing gone wrong. I wish that's how it was. PT school probably wouldn't be 3 years, but it's just not that simple. And like you said, social media just likes to make it a little bit easier than the reality of it. And kind of like what you're talking about with chronic pain, I mean, there's a whole biopsychosocial model on chronic pain and pain in general. It's not just, there's tissue damage. Tissue damage doesn't even mean that there's pain because it's an output of the brain. So it's not saying that it's all in your head. It's just saying that there's a lot of different factors that play into injuries right now.
And you want to know the worst part is that a fear of injury also can increase your symptoms too.
Yes.
Especially coming
that.
back from an
it's-
injury.
Yeah, like it's complicated, and like
Yeah.
if you panic and like every little thing you feel, you can, once you get more aware, it's like I pulled my hamstring not that too long ago, and definitely like the panic of not being able to run with my daughter. Like I knew it wasn't that bad; it was probably like very mild, but every time I started thinking about that, it just shot through the roof, and I was like, oh, like I'm very lucky that I have this training to be able to recognize that in the moment, but like how you feel, fear, oh my gosh, I can't do this, like it all plays in. So that's why for you, when we were talking, I was trying to stay as calm as, that's all strategic, like trying to stay as calm as possible.
I was freaking out.
Slowing the rhythm
Like,
of my
this
voice
happens all the
down.
time.
This is normal. This happened. Yeah, that's all strategic.
I could see it
Yeah.
in his eyes,
Yeah.
though. He knew I'm
That was not
messed
true.
up.
No, it's fine.
Well, when I got my stress fracture,
Yeah.
when I came back, I was super aware of that area. And every time I felt a little bit there, it's like, okay, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And now when I have athletes that have stress fracture and coming back, it doesn't happen that often, but there's going to be some sort of ghost pain.
Yes.
As long as you got your MRI and it tells you that you're healed,
Yeah.
you're good. But you're going to feel it,
Yeah.
for a period of time.
Right. I always, when I'm treating these runners and getting them back to running, I hear, well, I was just waiting for the pain to come on. It's like, we gotta listen to a
move that,
podcast. We gotta listen to audiobook. We gotta think about literally anything else besides, am I in pain? And then you start to think about it, and that overthinking can cause anxiety, which can basically cause you to think, well, I think I have pain. And I think that's where it's like, okay, there might be a little bit of pain, but it's not the end of the world. It's not a freak out moment. We just have to, keep going, adjust as needed. But it can be really bad when runners are like, I think I have pain. I was waiting for the pain. I'm not really sure if I had pain. That's when you're just overthinking too much.
And there's athletes that do that in races.
Or just returning to run.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're afraid of the pain in the race, and they go, oh, no, it's starting to hurt.
Yeah.
And then they start freaking out.
Yep.
And then they hyperventilate, and
It's over.
Yeah.
it's over.
Yeah.
And it's just this repeated cycle.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it can get really bad.
Yeah.
Where you're not racing anymore.
Right, because then you get like a neurologic pattern. The more you think a certain way, you actually build a set of neurons that makes that thought process easier and easier. And that's why people get stuck in some of those like thought processes. And to undo it, that's where our psychology colleagues are like awesome at like understanding how do I start rebuilding some new networks to help change or not get you stuck in that kind of thing. But yeah, it's tough. It is.
I got to get that going in my golf game. Where, just hit it the same all the time.
There's a huge psychology behind golf. Like
I'm sure there is.
Somebody was just talking to me about this, and I'm like, dude, I can't handle this right now. This is too much for my brain. Like, I'm tired.
It's crazy. But I know so many former competitive runners that golf. A ton. A ton. So
We need to do some research on this.
No,
Yeah.
I have a theory on it.
What percentage?
It's you stay very enthusiastic about whatever the endeavor is if you're improving or you have the potential to improve. And a guy like me, I'm never going to run faster than I did 20 years ago. And so it's now just a fitness thing. So I don't get totally fired up about doing workouts. I don't get totally fired up about doing tempo runs or going running the hills. I just want to get my run in. But in golf, I always have the thing in the back of my head that I can play a better round. It never happens. It hasn't happened for 5 years, but I have this hope that it is going to get better.
It's an exciting challenge.
It is, but I don't practice. I don't warm up. I don't take lessons. It's just supposed to be this divine thing that I'm better.
You're probably gonna crush me with this next comment, so I invite you to take a swing at me. But you don't get excited like as you, and this is again my PhD is in master's runners. So you don't get excited like, hey, as you enter like a new age range, you get to like forget and go, all right, I'm older, so I don't have to worry about those younger times. I get to start over each like 5 years or decade.
No, I'm not like that.
Okay,
I have friends like that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I
Joe's
chose
also a broken runner. He struggles to.
stay healthy.
Yes.
Well, back to the golf thing. I was trying to hit the ball harder and harder, and I pulled my hamstring. So that was the end of my running for about 6 months.
Oh, no.
Just stupid stuff like that.
And now, I mean, I notice too. I just get stupid injuries. Sometimes just getting out of bed, I pull something.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
as the age goes up, you're just more at risk of stupid stuff.
Yeah, but I know I acknowledge what you're saying.
Yeah.
Different age group, but that can go way overboard. Like that 72-year-old guy that got busted for being on PEDs.
Oh my gosh.
Like
Can we get a doctor's take on this? Is at 72 is that a good age for PEDs?
He got caught for I think 19 different performance-enhancing drugs.
I did not
In his
hear
system.
about this.
I didn't
Yeah.
know it was that many. But
That many at 72, and
Why?
the other thing is Crawford, who's down the hall, does Strava, and he does a couple loops or whatever hill climbs, and we were talking about the 72-year-old guy. And he goes, "Yeah, there's guys in town that every 5-year increment they're getting faster going up that hill.
Yeah.
They're faster at 65 than they were at 50. Now, is that normal for most people?
I would say-
Particularly if you have a long background of competitive cycling, I don't think you're getting significantly faster in your 60s than you were in your 50s. And I don't think you're getting faster in your 70s than you were in your 50s. But there are people that are getting faster in their 70s than their 50s.
There's a lot of factors to it, though.
Yeah, I think drugs are a big part of it.
So again, as physical therapists, it's not within our scope to be prescribing, but it's definitely within our scope to understand the impacts of stuff and review patients' medications. And so it doesn't matter to me if you're 72 or 22 in the prime of your life. That stuff all has consequences, and we are only just getting to see that. So where I did my fellowship in manual therapy and sport at Kaiser was in downtown LA. So I got to work with all the old ex-bodybuilders who had done all this crazy stuff and inject themselves, and I got to see what that looked like in 30, 40 years.
It don't look good.
It was horrible. I would not wish that stuff on anybody. Several of them were gracious enough to let us do a couple, not injection or anything, but like watch how they progress from like a case study perspective. It was really difficult. Like the amount of that they had this kind of like what's called like chronic rhabdomyolysis, where anytime they tried to start exercising harder, they would go into it, basically where rhabdo is essentially where you're like your muscle tissue gets broken down so quickly it's dumped in your bloodstream and you can die from this. So they would get like life-threatening, like end up in the ER just because they tried to do like a weight workout.
Wow.
Almost any time. And it was like trying to get these individuals to go, you know what, you still need to stay active. Can we try yoga? Can we try something? But it was like their whole body was revolting. And so it was like, that's scary to me because our bodies are definitely changing as we get into the 70, so first changes really start when you're 30, start to accelerate a little bit when you're 50, and then 70 is where things really take off. That is the worst time in my mind if you start doing this stuff. And I just, because we don't know. We don't know.
We have no
It doesn't look good when you're doing it when you're 20s. It definitely can't look good when you're doing it.
Back in the 80s when I was competing, there was a couple telltale signs of what happened to people that were on drugs. And there's three things that you look for. One in males was testicular cancer, which would make sense. The other one is if you have primarily sprinter and they have braces in their late 20s. And they didn't have braces in their late teens or early 20s because they're taking growth hormone and their jaw is expanding. And the other one is Graves' disease because you're using needles and that's passed through. Yeah, so those were the three things you looked at.
You know the one thing I look for? When these athletes cross the line in world record times.
Oh, yeah, that's...
And all their competitors drop to the ground just dead, and they're jogging around having a good time. And it's just like, how could you just do the fastest effort in human history and you're not even sweating?
That was Graham Williamson. So Graham was in charge of Adidas tennis and track and field. And in our building, there's Tennis Warehouse and Running Warehouse. So Graham would visit the Tennis Warehouse, and they'd go out to dinner. But they'd bring me because he was a track guy. He was one of the top milers in the world. So he didn't know anything about tennis. He knew a lot about track. So I would go out to dinner with him and talk track. And I said, what were the telltale signs of someone being on drugs? And he said, in the 1500 or the mile, if you come off the turn and you're running as fast as any human has ever run and you can accelerate, something's wrong with that. Yeah. So
I definitely could not accelerate today at all.
Not with donuts.
Definitely not with donuts.
You got to explain what happened today.
Yeah, so I think by the time this episode comes out, it's possible the Donut Mile Challenge might already be live
basically,
on our site.
You guys were eating donuts and racing.
But yeah, we brought all the influencers together. We got 10 minutes to eat as many donuts as possible, and then you ran a mile. And it was chaos. It was painful. But your boy took the dub.
Okay.
Yeah. Connor took the win. Yeah.
Me and Matt took very opposite strategies.
Yeah.
So I will preface this. Matt was the only runner to wear a true super shoe today. He thought he was the wild card coming out, the hot shot, the ringer. But I came in with a strategy. I'm going to eat as many donuts as possible. I had 9. Matt had 2.
Yeah.
But you got whatever.
I got a huge head start.
It was 20 seconds bonus per donut.
That's too much.
It didn't. Yeah, you know what?
You went past the first lap.
You did 4, and I was like, I was
donuts,
watching you and going, oh, that's got to hurt. And you're like, actually, I'm not bad. I'm like, oh, maybe I can
but it
handle
hurt later.
Oh, it did. Okay, got it. Okay. You look like you're doing good. You came out and you're like, oh, this isn't as bad. And then I was like, but
that's 80 seconds. I mean, that's like a 400.
Yeah, looking back,
it's still hurting.
I think I would have gone, if I was trying to optimize at a World Donut Mile challenge record. I think 7 would have been just enough to where I think I could have pushed it and maybe ran
5 minutes.
quite a bit faster. Because I was on the line of I didn't want to throw up.
Yeah.
So I definitely toned
Where'd you come
it
up with the
down.
20 seconds?
It was literally just I didn't want to go full 30.
Yeah.
And
No,
I
I
thought,
was thinking it'd be closer to 10.
you know, we can adjust for the
Okay,
next
next
time.
one.
Yeah.
I didn't do it, so you know.
Yeah, maybe
I
we'll
still
get you
think
in.
I think we should do the traditional style with this is donut lap,
Lap,
donut
donut.
lap,
Yeah.
donut.
Okay.
Do it officially.
Yeah.
like a
Maybe
beer
next
mile.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think that'd be fun, and I think we might be able to set a world record.
We might be
Yeah.
able to. That would
Oh,
be
yeah.
good.
yeah.
Now I know what to
Do you have
train
anything
for.
else?
You know, we hit it all. We hit
Yeah.
we hit fractures, we hit PEDs,
Yeah.
and everything in between.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Talked about chronic pain. Oh,
Yeah.
fun fact on the whole weakness
Yeah.
thing. So everybody used to talk about, oh, you need core strengthening for people with low back pain. A lot of the evidence actually came out that people with low back pain frequently will have more active core muscles because everything is protecting you all the time because it hurts. So again, don't always assume things. You got to figure out what's going on. If things are too complicated and you're kind of having trouble, that's when getting a medical professional involved might be really helpful to help guide you. But then make sure that medical professional is actually helping you learn more about yourself.
Right.
We are all very unique.
It's also helpful to have someone that knows the sport that
Yeah.
you're doing.
For sure.
So
Definitely.
my physician, the one who gave me that,
Yeah.
well, it's actually the 40th anniversary of him winning
Wharf to
Wharf to Wharf.
Sweet.
And then also he coached Jordan Hussein in high
Yeah.
school. So he knows competitive running.
At least
And
a
so-
little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just
but he
kidding.
also
I'm just
he
kidding.
knows what you're trying to achieve or trying
Yeah.
to accomplish.
Yeah.
And what to definitely do and definitely don't, that type of thing. So it helps to find a professional that, if I guess the people listening is all
Right.
distance runners, but someone
Right.
that understands competitive distance running.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think today this might be our smartest room we've ever had at Mr. Rubio used to run, and I think it really leans because of this half of the room.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But we'll see. Maybe we can match this in the future with we got a couple other of your smart buddies coming in, but this was a fun one.
Yeah, awesome. Well,
Thank you guys
Yeah,
so
thank
much for
you.
having
Thank
us.
you guys.
You've got to give yourselves more credit with how much knowledge is also on this side of the table and experience as well. So there's
Yeah, it's mostly experience.
That's okay.
It's not always good experience either.
It's not always correct.
I will tell you,
experience.
having done 5 years for a PhD is also not always good experience. Like, why did I do that? Like when I finished, I saw this meme that said, doing this is like doing a group project, except the group is just you from multiple years ago, not knowing what to do.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys.
Until
Thank
next
you.
time.
All right. Peace out. Oh, wait. Comment.
Oh, we almost forgot.
I almost forgot.
No, no.
Like, comment, subscribe. There
we go.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
Cut.
Okay.
Good.
Peace
It's a
out.
wrap.
Thanks, guys.